Podcasting can honestly feel like this giant, complicated beast. There's editing, there's equipment, there's consistency. There's a lot that goes into podcasting. I am not here to doubt that. But here's what I do know after producing 3 different astrologers' weekly podcasts over the past 6 months. You don't need a huge team or endless hours to make this work for you. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact method that I've developed myself, that I use myself, and that I teach my clients in how to create their weekly podcasts in under 10 hours per month. Yes, this actually can work in that amount of time. And what that actually looks like on a weekly basis can be 30 minutes every weekday or 2.5 hours every week. This is your behind the scenes roadmap that's simple, repeatable, and completely doable on your own. My name is Liz Manuel. If we have not met yet, welcome to the channel. I am a 5-year content strategist and producer, and I help businesses, solopreneurs, small business owners like you create content that is high quality, evergreen, and that does not take all of your time. So we are actually in this video going to run through every single step of the plan to publish method. I have developed this method after 5 years of marketing, social media managing, content producing, media strategisting. This plan to publish method is basically my years of experience doing content strategies for different types of businesses, all truly in the small business, health and wellness realm. And so if that is you, look no further. I have the exact method that is going to take you from being scrambled and trying to create content on the fly to having a perfect system that is actually sustainable, right? Like, I did not develop this and think that you're going to stick to this to the T and it's going to work for you only if you stick to it to the T. There is room in this method for a bonus week, for some free time, and that is what makes it sustainable for the long term. So without further ado, let's just dive right into the method. So you heard me say plan to publish. The first step is plan. What we're actually going to go through is the 4-step framework, which is plan, create, edit, and publish. Okay, so just so you know what's ahead, that is what we are going to go through in this video. So let's start with plan. The plan stage is dedicated to outlining your content piece. But before we can outline, we actually have to acknowledge what has previously done well, right? Because if we know that your audience really resonates whenever you talk about a specific topic or whenever you have a specific format for your content, we want to pay attention to those things, because instead of looking at what is working with other people in your niche, it is way more valuable to look at what's actually working in your own channel. Now, why is that? The reason is because it gets so nuanced to try to understand why content is doing well for somebody else. We don't know if they're doing this and they're only comparing to their previous content and saying, oh, I know that whenever I talk about this subject, this does well. And whenever I do this specific thing in my content, it does well. We can't really compare ourselves to other people that way. They're unique. They have their own way of speaking. They have their own experience. And it is going to do you much more of a service to just look at what you've previously done and to acknowledge and write down what has done well. Look at those pieces of content that have done well. And when I say well, we want to focus on 3 different things. Click-through rate, which should be about 4 to 5% as a good click-through rate. Average percentage viewed, which is the amount of time that your audience who saw the piece of content watches your content and is engaged. So that is our form of engagement. And that should be around 40% to be considered really good. And lastly, if there were any subscribers gained from this piece of content, we want to know that, because we want to know if there is anything going on that is allowing them to say, hey, I need to basically save this for later. I trust this person enough to follow them. I want to hear what they have to say next. Subscribers gained is basically the door being opened for another person to gain value from you. So you're going to want to pay attention to those 3 metrics. So after you have acknowledged what has done well in your previous content, we want to identify from your strategy what storyline you want to tell with your content. Within my program, I don't use content pillars. I use problem and solution pillars. And so what this does is it gives you one problem associated with your one solution. And what you do is you basically bridge the gap through 4 to 5 content pieces. And each of those pieces are going to speak to the different stage that your audience is in. Okay, so when I say problem to solution storyline. Without you getting confused, I just wanted to clear that up. You identifying the storyline you want to tell is going to last you 5 content pieces, because if you already know the storyline, it's basically going into your content strategy template that I provide for you and picking basically the content idea that aligns with those stages. I also give my clients ChatGPT prompts to help them come up with content ideas. And so this is all basically assuming that you have those prompts, you have the ideas already there for you, and you're basically picking the content idea based on the buyer stage. And that is when you go into outlining your piece of content. So before we end the plan stage, I want to actually outline what your content piece should really look like, okay? And just because I don't want you to feel like, oh, she's just talking about the program and everything, I want to actually give you guys what that actually looks like. So each content piece should have at the top title and thumbnail, okay? And I really do focus on video podcasting on YouTube. But at the same time, if you're doing blogs, if you're doing a podcast episode that's just audio, you might not have to think about thumbnail so much, but you're still going to have to think about title. And of course, thumbnail still matters if you're doing writing and blogging. So this is where we think about the click-through, right? Like you want to pay attention to what did well with click-through specifically when you're thinking about producing a new title and thumbnail for a new content piece. Click-through is referring to the amount of people who clicked on your piece of content based on them seeing it in general. So like an impression, right? You see a piece of content, it's the percentage of people who saw it versus the percentage of people who clicked. So the percentage of people who clicked is your click-through rate. And that is just showing you if it's high, that means that the more people saw it, or the amount of people who saw it, there's more people who saw it who clicked on it than didn't. And so the higher it is, the better. So that is just explaining to you that in terms of acknowledging your previous month's content or your previous content, you're going to want to pay attention to that when you're trying to develop a new title and thumbnail. And so at the base level, your title should be casual enough, but really hyper-focused on exactly what you were talking about in the video. You don't want to try to be sneaky or different or unique in your title. Title is really a good place for SEO keywords, and it is the best place to have the keywords that you want people searching for to find your video. So if you're doing a video about how to grow your first herb garden, you don't want it to be much different or outside of the bounds of that right there, what I just said. Your thumbnail, however, can invoke some emotion and can be the thing that allows people to maybe have a bit more interest than just how to grow your first herb garden. Maybe the thumbnail has a number of the amount of herbs you grew, and it says 1,000 herbs grown in X amount of time, right? Like that's interesting because it's not only going to show you how to grow your first herb garden, but it's going to maybe teach you how to grow that much and have that level of success in your growing. So that is just an example of how your thumbnail can look. Next thing is your hook, okay? Your hook is important. I don't want it to sound hooky for you, but your hook really is the time and the place to convince people to continue watching or continue reading or continue listening. So this is also a great place to talk about what you've done. It's a great place to talk about your story, but not like deep diving into your story, maybe. I think that actually could somewhat work for some people, but it's a great place to give the real numbers, the real experience, the thing that is going to tie people in. And a really good way to tie people in is to relate to them. And so that is why I say story here, like really emphasizing your story is a really good way to hook people in. Let's use the example of the herb garden again. The hook for that kind of piece of content would be great to be like after 2,000 seed to sprouts, or after 2,000 tries, or after 15 seasons of trying to grow herbs from seed, I have cracked the code, right? Like that's a really good hook because you're like, whoa, they had all this experience. And maybe after that one sentence, they go into, let me take you back. And then they go into how they started. And then they say, I've learned exactly what not to do. And I've learned the best things to do to get the best quality herbs. So you're going to want to stick around if you want to learn how to do the same. So that's a great hook because you're capitalizing on your story and you're also hyper focused on growing the herb garden, right? Like you want to always tie in back to that title, make sure it's accurate to that title, and you'll be golden. The next thing that you want to just make sure you're hitting on in your planning session is the goal of the video. So yes, the title should have the goal of the video basically ingrained in that, but you want to be more specific. So for instance, like the goal of the video when you're teaching somebody how to grow the herb garden is maybe not so much teaching them how to grow an herb garden, but it's teaching them the right way and how to avoid the mistakes I've made. So therefore, it's giving you more context into what to go into in your key points. Now comes the key points. So you're basically going to want to have 4 to 5 or 3 to 4 key points in your video, in your blog, in your podcast. Okay. So these key points, I recommend just having the sentence or the phrase of the key point. I encourage you to kind of riff on that key point. I don't believe that you should just have it all written out like a script. I think that that can sometimes get confusing. And so the key points should really just be there as little anchors for your brain to be like, yes, I remember what I meant by that. Let me just riff. Because the best content comes out when you're authentically speaking. And when you even like have ping pong brain and you're thinking about all the things that maybe you did, and maybe there's a story in there that you kind of forgot about and it comes to you when you're speaking. This is good content because it's relatable. It's not so structured and professional. Like people really do like casual content. And so I recommend you just have a phrase for your key points. And then we get into your calls to action. So a lot of people will say you should have 2 at least calls to action in your videos. I do believe that. What I find is really good, and actually what just came to me is a little story. See, this is an example. My client had a video go out, right? She's in one of my consulting programs, and she posted a video that was basically at the time, 250 views, okay? So some people would call that a lot, right? Some people would call that not a lot at all. And what she had, even at that point, with that, at that level, she was at 250 views, it was growing, right? But in our consulting, I've taught her how to structure her content. And she just started utilizing that strategy. And she got 2 clients booked from doing a call to action in the beginning and a call to action in the end, and specifically a brief call to action in the beginning and a more thorough call to action towards the end of her video. And so we deep dove into this and we figured that that is exactly what happened. And so what I want to say to you is, yes, 2 calls to action per video at least. If you want to try to weave in other things, maybe the keyword is don't try, and instead kind of naturally weave in things. The key thing is to weave it in naturally always. So even though you have 2 calls to action that you need to kind of do, make sure that your piece of content is relevant to what you're calling people to do, what you're basically saying, hey, go here next, or hey, I have something here that could help you out with this. It should really flow that seamlessly. If it doesn't flow that seamlessly, it's not a good call to action. And so instead of saying, oh no, I don't have a good call to action, maybe just align your offers a little bit closer to what you are doing in your videos, right? That is probably the better way to go about it. Okay, so we are on to the create stage. I know plan stage was a lot, and just actually ease you, that was the most, I guess, intensive step of the process, as you could probably imagine. Planning is a big step because you want to make sure you're hitting all of the things that your strategy is really built to do. So that is why the plan stage is a lot. So we are going to get into the create stage. Now, the goal of the create stage is dedicated to the action of content creation. So if you are a blogger, this is writing. This is the action of writing. If you are a video podcaster, this is the action of creating content, as I'm doing right now. If you are a podcaster who focuses on audio, this is recording your audio. Number 1 is setting up your environment for quality content. Now, what does that really look like? This is about feeling ready. This is actually really all about feeling. Now, stick with me here. You want to feel ready, meaning you want to look presentable. You want to feel grounded in your body, right? So that you have a calm disposition. And you also want to feel excited to talk about the subject matter. So these are all feelings. And as long as you feel these 3 things, which is ready, grounded, and excited, you are going to have more quality content because it is the sole thing that you're coming from, right? Like it's the thing that you are coming to your audience in feeling. and people can feel feeling, right? So you want to make sure that you're feeling up to par with these three things. The other part of setting up your environment is more technical, but it has to do with noise reduction, lighting, and the visual setup. So in terms of noise reduction, it's great to have a microphone, but you don't need it, okay? You don't need it. And if you are interested in knowing about the platform that I use, that you don't even need a microphone because it has a built-in studio sound toggle, that is Descript. The platform I use is Descript, and it does have a free version, but you might not have access to studio sound if you have the free version. I think the next step up would be either $10 or $15 a month, just so you know. It is 100% worth it, in my opinion, to get Descript. Why? Because when you record a video, it gives you a transcript, and that is going to help you in the publish phase, okay? So we'll get to that when we get there, but this is important because you don't actually need a microphone if you don't want to pay for one, but if you do, there is a really good option on Amazon. It's a $30 microphone, and it's perfect. You don't need much more than that. Lighting is actually kind of funny because you want less lighting. As you can see in my environment right now, I have one light on over here, I have a candle lit over here, and I don't have an overhead light on. But what I do have is a window right here. And so you don't need lighting equipment. And actually, videos tend to look better when you have less lighting and like little artificial lights like sprinkled throughout the back of your video, okay? So maybe one like window kind of setting where you're like next to a window so you have the natural light, but then incorporating artificial light is really all you need. The visual setup is really more about the feeling you're setting, what the stage you're setting, so to speak. So I am a cozy gal. I like being comfortable. I like being cozy with my coffee in the morning as I'm podcasting. And so this is a cozy setup, right? Like I don't have this bright light and things going on behind me. Like I don't really know what kind of video would do well with that kind of setting, but you know, you just want the visual setup to be appealing, and you also want it to align with your values. The last thing that I want to share with you about this stage is if you want to just think of one thing to make sure everything is aligned, think about the senses, okay? And specifically the four senses of sight, hearing, taste, and touch, okay? And so your sight is obviously the visual setup. What you hear is specifically how well you are reducing the noise, because you want to make sure that I'm the only thing that you hear. Taste would be your authentic expression, which has a lot to do about how you feel, right? I went through those three feelings in the beginning. And touch is something we haven't touched on, pun right there, but it is the impression that you leave. And this is directly related to how well your key points resonate with people long term. So if you get those four senses down, meaning you are basically taking them all into account and understanding that they all matter equally, you are going to have a great create session. All right, we are on to editing. We are on to the edit stage. Now, the edit stage is dedicated to polishing your creation for optimal performance. This could be seen as a nice to have, depending on how you see editing. Now, what I'm going to tell you in this video, which I tell you in a lot of other videos that I have, is you don't need to be a fancy video editor. You don't even need to know video editing. At this point in time, in 2025, you don't need to be a video editor, and you don't need to know even like the more advanced tactics of video editing, even the basics. Like you can truly do this way more easy now than ever. And trust me, I went to college for media production. I've been video editing since 2015, I've been video editing since like 2011, okay? And I'm telling you right now, it has not been easier to cut out mistakes and cut out pauses. You really don't have to do much when it comes to editing, okay? The biggest thing when it comes to actually editing out, maybe if we're talking about video podcasting, is just cutting out the long pauses and the mistakes. The other thing that you might want to do before that is color correct and format your video. And this is relevant to still bloggers and podcasters, but color correcting obviously not going to be relevant for audio podcasters or bloggers. But formatting is important to do in the beginning. Now, what does that mean exactly? So when it comes to video podcasting, I want to make sure I'm center of the screen and that the framing of me looks natural and looks non-distracting, okay? When it comes to blog formatting, we just want to make sure that there are clear headlines and that the paragraphs come in waves that are easy to read, easy to digest, right? You can build this out as you go, or you can build this out in the beginning. I find that formatting in the beginning is the easiest. When it comes to your audio file for podcasting, this is going to be a bit more difficult. And I actually suggest to maybe just skip this step if you are just an audio podcaster. So number 2 is cutting those long pauses and mistakes. Now, for an audio podcaster, this is going to be easy to do because if you are in an editor and you see all of the waves of your voice, you're going to be able to tell where those mistakes are or where those long pauses are at least. And you're just going to have to listen for those mistakes. And now it's pretty similar for video. What's amazing, and I don't mean to keep talking about Descript, but it is truly like the thing that has made this all possible. You can cut long pauses and cut filler words, which sometimes can be mistakes, but oftentimes they're more like the ums and the uhs, which are kind of nice to cut. You can do this in one click in Descript if you have the subscription that allows you to have the AI tools. And this is uncomparable. It's unmatched to anything I've ever experienced as a video editor. And so I highly recommend it for people who are not video editors and who are just wanting to do this for business and just need the simplest way to edit, okay? Lastly, this is all about the graphic animations, folks. Now, I don't want this to come across like you need graphic animations. You don't. You really don't at all. I talked about this in last week's video, but there's this kind of element of the anti-edit, the anti-scripting thing going around now. And it's quite amazing. And all it means for you is that the barrier to entry is much lower. You don't need editing at all even. You can just speak on screen and it will resonate with people, especially if you're telling stories, especially if you're coming off authentically and expressing yourself from a place of authenticity. Those are the things that actually matter. So when it comes to graphic animations, text overlays, other visual elements that help viewers, readers understand the unique method that you offer and the unique framework that you've developed for your business, these things can help, but they are absolutely not necessary. Another thing that I could say is basically an alternative to graphic animations if you're not interested in doing this, which, by the way, you can do graphic animations completely in Canva, which is free. When you hear the word graphic animation, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do that. It's literally just in Canva, you can create graphic animations, and I show you exactly how to do that in the Solo Podcast Producer Blueprint, which is waitlist right now. So if you're interested in that, check it out below. But an alternative, a great alternative that I've seen a lot is having a whiteboard behind you. So if you're not interested in doing these like post-production graphic animations and creating things in Canva and design, say like design is not your thing, have a little whiteboard, right? Like I've seen so many solopreneurs do this and it has the same effect. And it also feels like you're getting the value as if you're in a classroom, like you're paying for education and you're in this classroom with them and they're showing you how it all works behind you. This would be the equivalent of a graphic animation. And so that is basically my spiel on editing. We've made it to publishing. This is the last step. And this really is what it sounds like, right? When we hear the word publishing, all I mean is you're making your content visible and available to the public. And this is the process where we optimize your content for search. Now, if you're not into copywriting and you're just like, this is all foreign to me, please don't worry too much. This can be a lot more simpler than it seems. So much like the plan stage, we want to identify our industry's publishing trends, okay? So we're not comparing and we're not trying to match or mirror. We just want to see the types of thumbnail designs that maybe somebody in your niche is publishing. We want to see the copy style in the title. Like for instance, my niche, which is like content marketing, I've seen people do titles that look like text messages, right? Like, watch this and you'll never blah, blah, blah again. Or the one thing that my client did that X'd amount, the income, like things like that. These things are important because it's not so much to say that that's successful. It's just to say that the audience resonates with that And if you're able to do something like that in your own unique way, you're going to see success. Another thing to look out for is keywords. What are the keywords being used? Maybe there's a trend keyword that exists in your industry. A perfect example of that is what I just said in this video, the anti-edit, the anti-scripting methods. Those are actually more niche keywords in my industry. And so those are the things you just want to look out for, just to inform your designs, inform your titles, and inform yourself. So I'll tell you a little secret, and it's that I use ChatGPT and AI tools to do my title, to do my description, to do my tags, and basically anything that has to do with summarizing my piece of content. And how do I do that? Well, I keep talking about Descript, but it's the only platform I know that does this. It transcribes the video I upload as a raw, right? Like this is a raw video. I'm going to upload it to Descript. It's going to give me the transcript of the video because the AI can tell what I'm saying. So I'm basically going to see a very long paragraph, a video long paragraph of text. And so what that allows me to do is once I've edited, once I've cut out the words, which by the way, if you cut out the words in Descript, it cuts the video. So it's amazing. Once I've edited it that way, I can basically copy and paste the transcript into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is a video of me speaking. This is me. I'm authentically speaking in this video. And then you prompt it. You say, I want you to come up with thumbnail design overlaid text ideas. I want you to summarize this for me in a 1 to 2 sentence summary that sounds exactly like me in the way I talk. And then I want you to come up with some tags and give me some title ideas. And what you're wanting to do with the titles specifically is just get ideas and come up with your own. Basically, the whole process with using ChatGPT is you always want to prompt it, get back what you've prompted, and then edit it. You want it to still be super authentic to you and what you sound like and what you want it to be like. But what this does is it shortens the gap of time so much. You're going to basically be able to get this done in 30 minutes tops just for one piece of content. The other part of publishing is formatting your content description for optimal navigation. Now, this is way more relevant for audio podcasters and video podcasters, but for bloggers, it's basically like formatting the meta description. That is super simple. So I'm mainly speaking to my video podcasters and audio podcasters here. You want to make sure that your calls to action, those links are at the top. And if you want to go a step further, pin a comment, especially if you're on YouTube, pin a comment with those links in it for every single piece of content that you do. Why do I say that? Because if you're telling somebody to take an action, you don't want them to go searching and not being able to find the thing you're talking about. That's like the worst case scenario. So you want it to be super clear right at the top of your description. I don't care if you want a summary, put the summary below it. You want those links right at the top. And if you, again, want to go a step further, you want to get those links in the same format that they are in your description, put them in a comment yourself, and then pin that comment to the top. And the reason we do that is because when you're navigating on mobile, sometimes it's really hard to see where to open the description, but what you do see is the comments. And so if you pin a comment, it's the first thing they're going to see. All that's left, folks, is scheduling. And this is the easiest thing to do. You basically go into the back end of any platform, and I actually can confirm that pretty much all platforms have this capability, and it is to schedule out your content. Another piece of publishing is getting everything into a Word document. So you're going to want to basically create a write-up if you're doing a podcast or a video podcast where you put all your title, thumbnail design, description, summary, tags, all of that. You're going to want that easily accessible to you so that when you go to schedule out your content, you're basically just copying and pasting. Scheduling is really copying and pasting and putting the file into the upload window. Now, how can this be sustainable? This is the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video. And basically what I'm going to do is share the screen of the 2 ways that this can work for you. So this can work for you on a weekly basis where you plan on Mondays, you create on Tuesdays, you edit on Wednesdays, you publish on Thursdays, and you always are going to have a bonus day. Say that you didn't get to do something on one of those days, just shift it over a bit. The real importance here is to continue doing this in this order. you cannot really deviate from this order because everything else would get messed up. That doesn't exist. Say you actually have Mondays off. Monday and Tuesdays are your weekends. You can just shift this whole thing further into the week. So maybe you plan on Tuesdays, edit on Wednesdays, and so on and so forth. So it can look like this on a weekly basis. And again, the sustainability piece comes in when you have a bonus day every single week. Now, I actually have suggestions for how to utilize that bonus day if you want to. And it can actually really rocket your business in terms of the way that you bring traffic into your business. And you can use it as a repurposing day. So basically creating a blog post, an email out of this piece of content every single week on that Friday, that bonus day, that is going to help you immensely. So if you are able to do that on that day, that is what I suggest. The other way you can do this is in a monthly process, right? So you can see here that the month, it looks like you plan the first week, you create the second week, you edit the third week, and then you publish the fourth week. And then you basically always have an extra week. Now, I should say that this really does work best when you have 5 pieces of content, 4 to 5 pieces of content, okay? And so if you do end up having 5 pieces of content per month, this last week is just your bonus week, right? Like you don't have to do anything on that week. And because you're creating 5 pieces of content, it's going to last you 5 weeks. So you have 5 weeks of content already going out publishing. And so you're basically caught up. You can go a bonus week without doing anything and your content is still being published. If any of that was confusing, please leave me a comment. I would really love to know if this makes sense. If you have any questions about this method, I just know it to work the best out of any other method I've done when it comes to strategy, when it comes to sustainable content creation. And I am just so excited to share it with my community here on YouTube. What I specifically teach in my one-on-one consulting program is how to build an offer all the way to automating that offer. I want to help you get real return on investment from your time creating content. I don't believe in creating endless content and leading people to nothing. I think content from the start should at least be growing your email list, getting your community involved in what you do in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't always have to be growing your income, but that, of course, is one of the options when it comes to getting return on investment for your time creating content. And that is exactly what I help solopreneurs, consultants, and coaches do. Another very exciting thing that I am doing right now is I just launched the waitlist for a brand new interactive course paired with group consulting program called the Solo Podcast Producer Blueprint. And it's basically DIY podcasting so that you can learn how to do this in, again, 10 hours or less per month. I don't want this to take all of your time, and I want you to actually get results from your podcast based on your goal. So that waitlist link is down there for you as well. And be sure to check out my free resources. I do a lot of Google Sheets, Google Drive backend tools and resources for you. I know you're probably creating content. You need a place to organize it. You need a place to organize a strategy. You need a place to develop your strategy. I have all of that in my free resource vault that you can also find in the description below. So thank you so much again for watching this video. And if you are interested in learning what actually matters when it comes to podcasting, I break that down in last week's video that you can click on right here. So thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.